Hey everybody, this is Perch, and responding to a viewer, in this case another creator, message. And this is a case where I'm really urging the creator to come on and just let's talk about it during an interview or live stream or something, because I think these are words that people need to digest. It's not going to solve everything. It's not even going to solve most things, but it will help, because this is where I find myself in the middle. And I know that's a place everybody loves to put me, and it's always a fun, happy place to be, in the middle. In the middle doesn't mean you agree a little bit with each side. Like, I think a lot of people misunderstand the middle as being, well, I half agree with you and I half agree with you, and oh my gosh, it's too hard to make a decision. I'm just going to have to say you're both right. That's not the middle. That's abstaining from any kind of point of view. Obviously, I'm now like 250 video, sorry, 250, sorry, 2,500 videos into this channel. My opinion is pretty well known. I think anybody who comes in and is like, you're fence sitter, don't give your opinion. Like, clearly you're not listening at this point. It's very easy for me, for anyone. And I do like the fact that in the comments, more and more people are like, hey, dumbass, he's constantly giving his opinion. He doesn't shut up about his opinion. It's out there. This is not it's not a punting on opinion. No, I mean, the middle part that I find myself in is that I definitely have an opinion on what's going on, but I also see kind of how people arrived at the conclusions they've gotten to. And being pragmatic, I want to help figure out, how do you get somebody who's convinced of something to either see another point of view or to realize where their logic is flawed, because that's usually the case. Is somebody has a very definitive opinion on something, but they're missing it. Case in point, there's this argument. I saw Nerdette posted this on a comment on our channel, and this is something we've talked about here a ton before. And it's basically the difference between, sales and sell through. And it's the idea of, like, are comics failing when you see big stacks on the shelves at the comic shop? And is it fair that we count those as sales when they don't actually sell through to customers? Meaning they're sold to a retail shop, they're not sold through to customers. And we should be counting the sell through to customers. Well, as we've talked about before, that's impossible. Nobody has the stats or the numbers to track sell through to customers, and it's not that meaningful of a stat. Anytime you go into a comic shop and you see a big stack of books that are not selling, either one of two things has happened. Either number one, there's some kind of incentive program, so the retailer bought in knowing that he or she was going to have that big stack of comics because it was worth it to whatever that incentive was for. Or number two, the retailer, misordered. Part of the whole direct market deal was that the retailer gets a bigger cut because they're taking more of the risk, because there's no returnability. Back in the newsstand, there wasn't returnability. Now there's not. There was a business incentive, meaning a higher cut to the retailer, to go down that path, and so they did. Most retailers are still happy with that deal. That's why every now and then, and it's one of those things that doesn't get discussed a lot, when the idea of adding in returnability and lowering the cut comes up to retailers reject it. They would rather take the chance. They're betting on themselves. They're betting that they know how to order. And most of the time they do. When you're seeing a big stack, it means something either went wrong or it was part of a strategy. Usually part of a strategy if it's Marvel, DC. Usually something went wrong if it's an indie book. Just as a general rule of thumb, we could talk more about that later. But this is the kind of case where the people who bring that stat up, they really don't care about the stat. What they care about is to say the comic industry is hurting, and that the people behind it who say it's okay are intentionally misleading everyone and kind of misinterpreting the numbers to bolster their argument, which I'm sure is true of some, but it doesn't change the fundamental fact of what sale versus sell through means and how it relates to comics. Not everyone who cites that number is trying to mislead someone. A lot of people are. But anyway, this mail that we got is basically, it goes this way. It's like, Perch, I wish more of the customers, more of the fans. I do like, by the way, that more and more creators are starting to call them customers than fans. I think that's a positive movement. It shows some indication. But anyway, I think many of the customers' fans are taking what we say too seriously. Why aren't creators allowed to make a joke? They want to make a joke. We can make a joke. If somebody comes in and says something sarcastic and I reply in a sarcastic way, I'm making a joke. Why do the customers expect for us not to take them seriously, but expect us to always have to be serious? That sentence kind of breaks down a little bit. I'm like reading it while I'm like, am I reading this? No. Okay. Here's the thing. This is like a classic kind of middle position. And again, not in the everybody's a little right, but just realizing what everybody's about. Yeah, I do think people should be allowed to make jokes. And I do think in many cases, when you see a creator say something super salty on social media, it's a joke. They are making a joke, or they're putting on a persona, or they're trying to be, edgelord comic writer of Venom, or whatever it happens to be. They're putting on a little bit of a show. And social media encourages you to put on a show. That's kind of, they're urging you to do that. That's part of the entire model of social media. Is like, hey, it's not live your best self. It's pretend to be whatever self you want, and what you want tends to be snarky asshole. It tends to be the most popular persona people put on. And definitely creators are doing that. This is why if you do go and you meet somebody in real life, I mean, classic example, Tom King definitely enjoys the snarky asshole persona on social media, with a little bit of scolding and other things in there too. But in person, he's normally fairly pleasant. Not always. I mean, definitely he's had his stunts that he does at cons and everything, but he's generally a lot more pleasant in person. Anyone who's met him in person will tell you that. All right, so what do we know from this? Well, we can tell that, hey, online there's a bit of a show going on, and in person it's more like his real human being self, or at least the public version of that. The version that is in public doesn't want to get punched. Who knows how he is behind closed doors, completely in private. Often I find the people who are absolute snarky assholes online are usually pleasant in public, in person, but usually in private are pretty despicable people. I don't know. It's something. This is where the internet is freeing. It's you get parts of your personality that come out that you can't do in polite public, environments. So I can absolutely see that point, that the creator's like, why is it that, and I do think for sure that there are customers who, they are doing the same thing. They're also being snarky, and they can't take any kind of sarcasm, criticism from people. I mean, I am not a creator. I'm not any kind of public personality by any stretch of the imagination. And yet when I'm sarcastic on here, there's definitely people in here who are like, I reject this sarcasm. I won't take it. You shouldn't be sarcastic. They don't like it, even though that's pretty much my brand at this point. Sarcasm is something that if you're not feeling it, you're not in the mood for it. And that's unfair. I agree. However, and this is the big however, and this is always stuff that gets you into the middle. I think there's some people are being, it's disingenuous. It suspends disbelief to some extent when a creator's like, well, doesn't this person just know I'm joking? Well, no, half the time, no. When you're being a dick online, when you have, 20, 30, 50,000 followers that are gleeful sycophants that will jump when you tell them to jump. I mean, one of the grossest part of this entire thing that jumps out, you look at Gail Simone, you look at, we could do the extremes. You could do Gail Simone, you could do Donnie Cates, you could do Ethan Van Sciver. They all have a large following, and their followers are more than happy to kind of jump in and start punching if they feel like they're, the person they stan is getting attacked. Now, do you blame Gail Simone for this? You can't blame her for that. People are their own people. They there's not a secret commanding of the army to go out and attack targets. Everybody's responsible for themselves. But if you're to be clear, it's not Gail Simone that's writing, but if you're Gail Simone, you're like, why don't people just take my sarcastic jokes, or if I am making a joke about somebody, if I'm being a little bit more salty, nobody needs to take this like World War III. People should just have a sense of humor about it. Yeah, except that's hard when you have 50,000 followers, of which many of them are going to pummel you and rush to your defense. It's hard when you block people for being the wrong kind of sarcastic. And keep in mind, it is a bit well, not a bit. It's a lot hypocritical if you say, "Why don't people, take my jokes? I mean, it's just a joke. Just why can't people take a joke?" When if somebody jokes back at you, they're immediately blocked. Gail Simone was classic about that. Tom King, absolutely. If you told a joke about Tom King, I mean, I've said this story before. I did a panel of what that was done in the Heroes in Crisis for Creators in Crisis, and it was an amazing contrast between Bendis, Donnie Cates, Rob Liefeld, and Tom King. In each one, I used the Heroes in Crisis kind of with them in the confessional, saying, I don't know, whatever. I think with Bendis, I just filled it with so many word balloons you could barely see his face. He's just talking. And with Rob Liefeld, I made a crack about the nice thing about being in this panel is you can't see my feet, because he doesn't draw feet. And with Donnie Cates, I did some bit about, I don't know, he was getting pummeled on because people wanted him to ship Venom and Eddie Brock in some kind of poly relationship. And with Tom King, I did the, hey, have you ever wanted to see Superman's mom brutally murdered? Well, you're about to. Kind of leaning into the kind of depressing, dark aspect of what he was doing. Well, Rob Liefeld said, this is hilarious. Thumbs up. Gave it a like. Donnie Cates, oh man, this is true. I love it. Brian Michael Bendis, oh, this is funny. Thanks. All three, thumbs up, cheerful. Tom King, blocked. Didn't want to hear that joke. If you're like that, then you can't say why don't people take my jokes as jokes if you're going to turn around and then immediately have no sense of humor about anyone else. It goes back to if you're going to give some, you're going to get some. And you can choose to put up with that or not, but what you can't do is say, I should be able to give as much as I want, but I'm not going to take any. That doesn't work. People are going to think you're an asshole. Now, if you're popular, a lot of these comic creators are popular. They still got their 50,000 followers. You don't care. You could be hypocritical about this. You can say, hey, it's going to go only my way, and that's it. And, cool, that works for you. And it will work for you, I don't know, for as long as you're popular. The funny thing about, you can be hypocritical if you're popular enough, if you have enough of a following, you can be as hypocritical as you want. It's your show, and people may call you on it, but guess what? You don't have to deal with it because you're popular. This is one of the benefits of being famous. You don't have to, it doesn't have to make sense. But it is, I wish more people could take a joke. And I say that all around. If I say, for example, I think Al Ewing should have thanked Joe Bennett because I think that's just a classy thing to do when you finish a run. I appreciate that, people who are standing Al Ewing may come in and say, I don't agree and he can do no wrong in my book. We can disagree on that. I don't think worse of the person disagreeing. But these are just differences of opinion. Grown adults have to deal with this stuff all the time. On social media, we don't have to be grown adults. We don't have to live with consequences. We can just act like lunatics, and that's what people do. I think that it would benefit everyone to try and understand more that, yes, most of what we read, most of what we see is a joke. That people are clowning on each other, they're being sarcastic, they're not meaning anything, and we can find some humor in this. And I think we also have to accept that every now and then somebody's going to be having a bad day and not going to be in the mood for the humor, and they're going to snap and lash out. And hopefully those days don't happen too much, and we kind of meet in the middle and life goes on. I guess that's what I mean by middle perspective. That's my middle of the road, my fence-sitter perspective on all this. I get it. I get wanting people to just take your jokes as jokes and not fly off the handle. But if you live in a highly tense environment with polarization, and you've got this factor of a lot of your supporters who are willing to kind of jump in on your behalf and turn into a fight, If you have regularly gone out and blocked people and attacked people for things, yeah, it's going to be hard for people to take it as a joke. Sorry. I'm not saying it's wrong to think that. I'm just saying, we got to be realistic here. You're not going to get what you want. I can't tell if I'm sarcastic Perch or irritated Perch or dad Perch in this. One of those. Anyway, middle of the road Perch. That's what I am. I social media is a disease. I'm telling you, it's made very straightforward things so awkward. I mean, how pathetic. We're having to teach people how to take a joke again. It's crazy. Anyway, you can cancel me over on Twitter or YouTube or whatever else by typing into the comments and join the Mumbles army of working to get rid of Perch. That's the best thing you could do for all of us. Thanks for listening.